Terry McAuliffe, running for governor of Virginia, the same dude who said in a debate with Youngkin, who's the Republican opponent of Terry McAuliffe in the state of Virginia, both running for governor. Terry McAuliffe said, well, I don't think parents should have a role in their kids' education. And he said it not once, but twice to clarify that that's really what he believes. So a greater Washington area news channel, which is WJLA 7, interviewed Terry McAuliffe. It was a decent interview. It's about 11 or 12 minutes long. And we have a series of 4 clips, relatively short clips with Terry McAuliffe in that interview. And the reporter did a very good job and gave Terry McAuliffe plenty of time to answer the questions in the way he wanted. First of all, as an observation, McAuliffe was hyperventilating when he was answering the questions. You can tell he is really worried about this election. I mean, incredibly worried. He had no idea it was going to be this close. But doesn't matter. He's going to double down on all that bad stuff. All that bad stuff. Well, here is the first part of this interview. Should parents have a voice in education? We have that clip, and here it is.
You said this. You said, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. So are you saying parents shouldn't have a voice in their kids' education?
Sure, parents should have a voice, and parents do have a voice. I mean, I'm a parent of 5 children here in Fairfax County, Dorothy, and I've raised 5 children. The issue is here in Virginia, I mean, you look at my record, I put $1 billion in education. I got rid of 5 SOLs. Why? When I was running for governor, all the parents came up to me and said, you know, there's too many tests here. Children are learning to memorize, teachers are teaching to test. But there is a huge difference. I got into this race because of education. We're 50th out of 50 states on average teacher pay as it compares to the average pay. That's disgraceful. I'm going to raise teacher pay above the national average for the first time ever.
There you go. Terry McAuliffe trying to pay off the teachers union. So first of all, he's lying. He doesn't want parents involved in the public education process. Second, in his response there, he talks about the fact that parents, it's all about the money in public education. So he's saying, you know, we don't invest enough in education. What he means is that he only wants to put taxpayer money in government schools. He has no interest in school choice whatsoever. And that is the big payoff to the teachers union. And then, of course, lastly, he also talks about the fact that, you know, he has 5 children and, you know, he just really cares about this. And there was another point that he made in there as well. And I want to replay that clip because I want you to hear this really closely. And I want to see if you can catch it. Here's that clip again. Here it is.
You said this. You said, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. So are you saying parents shouldn't have a voice in their kids' education?
Sure, parents should have a voice, and parents do have a voice. I mean, I'm a parent of 5 children here in Fairfax County, Dorothy, and I've raised 5 children. The issue is here in Virginia, I mean, you look at my record, I put $1 billion in education. I got rid of 5 SOLs. Why? When I was running for governor, all the parents came up to me and said, you know, there's too many tests here. Children are learning to memorize, teachers are teaching to test. But there is a huge difference. I got into this race because of education. We're 50th out of 50 states on average teacher pay as it compares to the average pay. That's disgraceful. I'm going to raise teacher pay above the national average for the first time ever.
Did you hear it, podcast listeners? He got rid of 5 SOLs. So those are the standard of learning tests, right? Which actually test what you know. And what he was trying to say there, Terry McAuliffe, is, well, the parents didn't want them. And actually, there may be a little bit of truth to that. But the problem is, you know who really didn't want them? The teachers union didn't want them because it would measure the performance of the teachers. If you test students and you give the students a standardized test after, let's say, a basic 3rd grade math course, as an example, and you're 3 months into the school year and you give the first test to those students, they all take the same test in 3rd grade. And you have a third of those students who simply didn't learn the material. Well, it's kind of a good thing that you've caught that problem so that you can correct the problem right then and there, as opposed to letting it continue and for another 3 or 4 years. But here's the problem. The teachers don't want that test to be given, and they don't want the test to be given because it reflects on their teaching capability. I completely agree with you, podcast listeners, that some children don't learn as quickly as others. All right. I know that. But how do you know what they're learning if you don't test them? Okay. Maybe there is such a thing as too many tests, which is why I said there were certainly some parents that thought there was too much testing. But the real people who don't want it are the teachers. So that's Terry McAuliffe right there, basically saying, well, it's all about more money. Got to spend more money. Teachers union, pay off to the teachers union. We need to get rid of 5 SOLs. In fact, I did that when I was governor before. Well, no accountability. And definitely no school choice, because the so-called investing that he's talking about will be investing in only government schools. So here is WJLA 7 again in that same interview with Terry McAuliffe. Here's the real difference on education. And if you really want to hear clearly the difference between Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin, this is not just the difference in Virginia podcast listeners. This is the difference nationwide between the Democrats and the Republicans. Here's the clip.
And the real difference on education, let's be clear. Glenn Youngkin has a Donald Trump, Betsy DeVos plan. He has said publicly many times he will take money out of public schools and put them into private. The Washington Post just did editorial, and 3 independent reviews have been done of Glenn's plan. 43,000 teachers will be cut in Virginia.
So that's McAuliffe saying that his opponent, Glenn Youngkin, will take money out of public schools and put them into private. When the fact is that Glenn Youngkin and Republicans, not all Republicans, hopefully we will get to that point, but most Republicans believe that the education money should follow the student. Just like in the state of Virginia, when little Johnny changes his school district from Fairfax County to Loudoun County, the money follows Johnny to Loudoun County to the public school, from one public school to another. What the Democrats have blocked in Virginia and all of the other states where they control public education is money only is allowed to follow you when you move from public school to public school. It's not allowed to follow you when you move from public school to private school. So McAuliffe, of course, puts a really clever spin, as Democrats do. The difference is, because of COVID, parents are paying attention now, and they're really calling out the BS of the Democrat Party and how they are wrecking public education. And so Channel 7, WJLA, also asked the question, well, how do you deliver a world-class education? How does that happen? We had that third clip here in this interview, and here it is.
But the issue is, how do we deliver a world-class education? And the way we do that is invest in it. As I say, I'm going to put $2 billion in.
He's going to put $2 billion in. Right, now think about this, podcast listeners, okay? Think about this logically. You have a guy running for governor. He's Terry McAuliffe. And his payoff to the teachers union is $2 billion, because obviously the money is not going to go to the kids. It's going to go to the teachers, right? It's a payoff. And then when you do the payoff, the teachers union then pays you with handsome donations for your next campaign. But if you use that same $2 billion instead, and you just gave it to the parents across the state of Virginia, that would be game-changing. And I don't know the numbers of how many school-age K-12 students there are in the state of Virginia. I don't know what those numbers are. But if Terry McAuliffe has $2 billion to spend, and that's really what Virginia has, in addition to what they're already spending, I'm saying, on public education, then why not earmark the $2 billion for school choice, right? That's the perfect bill, because for some reason in the Democrat Party, they don't believe in the uniquely American ideal of competition. They're all about monopolies. It's really interesting, right? They love the tech monopolies, but they also love education monopolies. And we know throughout history, monopolies don't work. They don't serve you. They only serve the master who runs the monopoly. So what about vaccinations? WJLA 7 reporter asks Terry McAuliffe. So listen to this two-step. This is when Terry McAuliffe really hyperventilates in this interview. And once again, it shows you and it illustrates, podcast listeners, not just about the differences in public education between the Democrats and the Republicans nationwide and how completely polar opposite they are in their philosophies, but also about these mandated vaccinations. And man, good old Terry McAuliffe really goes back and forth. I mean, just a complete tool, to the point that you can never, ever trust this guy. We had that last clip, and here it is.
We heard a lot of feedback from our viewers in Northern Virginia on where you stand on COVID-19 vaccine. So real quick, yes or no, I know you don't have much time left. Do you support vaccine mandates for state employees?
Of course I do.
What about kids who are eligible to get the vaccine?
I'm for everybody getting vaccinated. I have been a leader in this country. Schools, nurses, doctors. I want every employer to mandate that their employees be required to be vaccinated.
Last March, you told me that you said it should be up to businesses to require that, but you want the state to require.
Oh, wait a minute. I can only do what I legally can do. I can do state employees. I can't mandate I can be a bully puppet. I don't have the legal authority to do that. But clearly I can for 122,000 state employees.
So everybody in Virginia must be vaccinated. That's what good old Terry McAuliffe says, including businesses and the people that work for them. And then when the follow-up question is asked by WJLA 7 interviewer, Terry McAuliffe is like, well, I didn't actually say that. I mean, businesses can't be mandated. Can't mandate it. I can only mandate it for all the employees of the state of Virginia. And this is the problem, podcast listeners, right? I mean, we have governors who actually think they can mandate certain parts of your healthcare, and they can't do it. They can't. It is completely and utterly antithetical to our way of life and our Constitution. And yet this is what the Democrats believe now. And they've weaponized government, and now they've managed to weaponize healthcare. They've weaponized education, public education, by trying to get your kid to hate the kid next to him, and to trying to get your other parents to hate excellence and hate merit. I mean, these are sick people. These are really sick people. And if they take over this governorship in Virginia, I would have to say that if you live in Virginia, you have to really think twice about whether this is a place that is the best place for your school to learn, unless you can afford to send your child to private school in Virginia, which is phenomenally expensive, of course, which is why the Republicans think that the money should follow you, the tax money, because if it follows you, then the money issue is eliminated from the conversation. Now that's taken care of. It's just a matter of what school do you want to choose. So also in good old state of Virginia, the prosecutors in Loudoun County that are trying to prosecute that dad in Loudoun County, Virginia, who was arrested because he was trying to speak at the school board about his daughter being allegedly raped in the bathroom. Obviously something happened, because the kid that did it, that was in a dress, was moved to another school. So something happened. Clearly, they wouldn't have moved the kid if there was no actual sense of truth to what this dad is alleging. But nonetheless, the prosecutor in Loudoun County wants to prosecute the dad. He wants to prosecute, and the prosecutor is funded by George Soros. So once again, podcast listeners, while all of us are sleeping and believing in our system of government, while we're all thinking, school is the one place we can send our kid, and it's really a safe place, and our children are going to learn, and things work. They just work, because this is America. This is the one place where things still work really well. And they've stopped working because the Democrats have politicized public education to the point that they have literally destroyed it in many parts of the country. And in the parts that they haven't destroyed it, they're well on their way of doing so. And everybody knows it, by the way, including teachers. When you speak with teachers, they will tell you. Okay? I mean, they will definitely give you an earful. And the teachers, in my opinion, are the heroes, of course, but the union, in my opinion, is also the union is, they're public enemy number one. Teachers are wonderful. Teachers are terrified of speaking up, though, because if they do, they'll be moved, or they won't be promoted, or they'll be marginalized. And we all know that this is the case. Also, speaking of public education, in California, public school enrollment drops to a 20-year low. A 20-year low. Imagine that. A 20-year low in California. That's because, of course, the pandemic. naturally, but what specifically about the pandemic caused California enrollment to drop to a 20-year low? Well, naturally, as you might imagine, it was the fact that parents decided to homeschool or send their kids to private school. And I can only hope that in the really super blue states or the bluish states, that this will be the defining issue of our time. And parents will finally start looking not at party affiliation, but who's really doing the best for their children and who really means their children well. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me.